Hello everyone and welcome to Makai-World Reviews. This is episode number 74 and we are sadly in our last week of Harry Dean Stanton month. I was so happy to talk about Mr. Stanton this month and I hope you have enjoyed it as well. We're going to be looking at today at Paris, Texas. Should I have done these in chronological order? Would you prefer if I do a month in that kind of order or do you care about it at all? Either way, I am the Tona Makai, a master of minds and men, and let's go ahead and get right to it. But of course, before we begin, you know the routine, subscribe. Do it. I'm a very small channel. I want to grow. I need this community to do it. Also, hit me up on Instagram under Demon Peaks to let me know what you want me to review. And also check out my Twin Peaks memes that I do daily. Paris, Texas, directed by Wim Wenders. He directed Wings of Desire, which is a movie I love. A fantastic movie that I'm surely going to talk about in the future. The sequel, Far Away, So Close, is okay. Beyond that, and his road movie trilogy, Wim is essentially a documentary director. I don't know enough about documentaries to give you a real opinion on them, save what I like, so that's all. Written by L.M. Kit Carson and Sam Shepard. Okay, L.M. Kit helped write this, as well as another powerhouse film, In the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, a brilliant sequel, a satire, just a film that does not get enough love, especially from horror or, honestly, Chainsaw Massacre fans. And Sam Shepard, playwright, novelist, actor. Man has done a lot more than I can list here. My other favorite movie he's done as a writer and director was Far North, which I'll be talking about this year. It was a Sean Bean vehicle. Starring, of course, Harry Dean Stanton, the Man of the Month. Actor, singer, songwriter, did so many movies. Pretty in Pink, The Green Mile, Alien, Cool Hand Luke. Had a long history with David Lynch and Twin Peaks, Wild at Heart, Inland Empire, and The Straight Story. Just a wonderful man, a talented actor, and someone I hold in high regard. Rest in peace, my friend. I did this month for you, and I hope someone, somewhere, appreciates it. And Natasha Kinski, model, actress, and was in Wim's sequel to Wings of Desire that I mentioned, Far Away, So Close. Among many other things, she worked with Mr. Stanton on Inland Empire some years later. Talented, beautiful lady, seems to be enjoying her later years relatively quietly. The release date for this movie was November 2nd, 1984, and what came out the same week? The Rosebud Beach Hotel, where sex and laughter run riot, says the tagline. Really, it's Peter Scolari from Bosom Buddies and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the TV show fame, about affairs and laughter, and they actually got Christopher Lee to be in this. Good God, a forgotten movie, with good reason. And Love Lines. No one of note outside of Shecky Green and Miguel Ferreira are in this, both of whom have bit parts. And I use the term movie loosely. It's about a battle of the bands, which was done much better in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. It's a comedy, but I also use that loosely. All right, getting to the plot. We meet a wandering Travis, mute, in poor health, who collapses in a nearby town in South Texas. His brother Walt is contacted to come get him, and hops too. He gathers Travis up, and eventually during their travels to Los Angeles, where Walt and his wife Anna live, Travis talks about Paris. Not Paris, France, but Paris, Texas, where he bought a tract of land some years ago and hopes to do something with it. Travis begins coming back to his old self, and when they arrive in L.A., he sees his son, Hunter, who lives with Walt and Anna and has for 4 years. His mother, Jane, having abandoned him some time ago, Finley begins healing a little bit, even watching some home movies about better times they all had in years gone past, and Travis and Hunter begin to bond. I think I forgot to mention that Hunter is 8, so it's most of his life he hasn't seen his father. Travis begins taking his role as father seriously, and with some of a Hispanic maid, even changes his dress sense to be more father-like. Anna drops a bomb on Travis, saying Jane deposits money in an account for Hunter every month in a bank in Houston. And this sparks Travis to take Hunter and go to Houston, not only to find Jane, but develop a relationship as father and son on the long car ride. With the aid of some trusty walkie-talkies, they see Jane make the deposit and follow her. Arriving at a shady club, Hunter stays in the car while Travis heads into a kind of, not nudie booth, but fantasy booth of sorts, with Jane working at one behind some one-way glass. He doesn't reveal who he is, but slightly accuses her of prostitution and leaves shortly after. Jane, learning nothing about who he was, he tells Hunter he found his mother, but knows little else about the situation. Travis gets drunk and tells Hunter about the place in Paris, Texas, and they crash in a nearby laundromat, like beside a laundromat, for the night. The next day, having gotten a hotel room for Hunter, Travis records a tape saying goodbye to his son. He's going to try to get Jane to come with him, but he isn't coming back. He goes to talk to Jane in her booth. He tells her a story about him, about them, their marriage, how it fell apart because he was a monster, a piece of shit. That was no sort of man, how he let her down every day, how his obsession, his jealousy ruined them. He was a fool, a broken man. It occurs to her slowly who she is talking to. After having Hunter, her postpartum depression hits hard. She stopped caring, and Travis became more of a monster. Eventually there was a fire, and she and Hunter were gone, and Travis went into the desert and lost all sense of who he was, or who he had been. A true fool. She turns the light off in the room, and they come face to face between the glass. Jane says for a long time she talked to him in her head, about him, to him. She could hear him until one day even Travis was gone in her head. Travis tells her where Hunter is and leaves. Shortly after, she goes to the hotel and finds her son, and they embrace as Travis drives away into a future he made for himself. I want to talk about the characters first, then some scenes, and of course my overall feelings. Travis, Harry Dean Stanton, this was the best movie I could pick for a final movie in this month. It might be his greatest work as an actor. He absolutely 100% knocked it out of the park in this one. He gave Travis such depth, from the strange OCD quirks he had, maybe even a little bit autistic, hard to say, to the sincerity he had in wanting to be a father, to the admission and torment he suffered over the man he was. A lot of movies are afraid to make their main characters have such a strong duality. Travis isn't in particularly a likable character. He has a certain charm, but he's not what I would call a good person. He's a real person. He feels like you could know a guy like that, a man who lost himself to obsession and became a beast, a man who realized he lost the only thing worth having, and in his emptiness tried to do something to right that wrong. Could he have reformed a relationship with Jane? Maybe, but the scars were deep, and all that time had done nothing to mend what happened. It would have been hollow. It would have been empty. And Hunter, I don't usually like to talk about kid actors, mainly because 95% of them are garbage. I mean, it's acting is difficult, and kids mostly don't get the subtlety of performance until way later. But he did an excellent job here. He acts like a kid. He is silly and funny and doesn't understand the reasons that people act the way they do. He openly questions things frequently. He wants to bond with his father. He misses his mother. But he also accepts Walt and Anna as caregivers that genuinely love him. There's a scene at school where he tells another boy he has two dads, and they're brothers. It's kind of funny. Also, his idea to get the walkie-talkies, which helps them find Jane. Watching him bond with Travis is nice, and there's a lot of heart in this character. And Jane. Natasha Kinski she was great here. Beautiful, vulnerable, lost. She had hid all who she was under this charming, smiling facade. She was a woman who lost so much and had no idea how to put the pieces back together. She was flawed like Travis. She was young and in love and threw herself into it, with all the pain and sorrow it had. She had postpartum depression, something my daughter's mother had. And I saw it eat at her. She loved our daughter unconditionally, but it gnawed at her soul to feel so broken up inside. There's only so much I could do, and eventually she came out of that kind of funk. But if you don't have a support system, how could you ever? She didn't have a big part to Jane, but she was a huge looming presence in the film. She cast a large shadow over the whole thing. The part where she said she didn't want to use her son to fill her emptiness, that hit hard. And her and the actor who played Hunter do look a lot alike. I buy that that's his mother. Though her accent sucked, as she sounded like Clarice Starling, and not like she was from Texas or wherever she was supposed to be from. Walt and Anna, both did a good job. Walt, Dean Stockwell, felt like the heart of the first part of the movie, Travis's conscience. And Anna felt like she didn't sugarcoat anything, or how she felt. She was more honest. Not mean, but honest. They were mostly set-up characters, and they were just faded background ones by the end. They generally had a good part to play in the movie, and both did an excellent job. Other various things I want to discuss before my overview. I mentioned Travis's OCD, and it came out in a number of pretty interesting ways. He was really weird about shoes. He took all the shoes out of Walt's house and polished them and lined them up outside. He couldn't get into a different car when Walt was driving him. He had to have the same car. It was a rented car. He couldn't fly in a plane. Just a few of the little things that came out as, interesting. I don't know to what end they were necessary, except to flesh out Travis as a complete character. But there they were. At the beginning, there's a doctor who treats Travis in a South Texas clinic. It reminds me of a Bugs Bunny-style, German doctor, or a sitcom-style German doctor. He bordered on a fleeting Nazi parody. I really enjoyed the moment with them, brief as they were. He criticized Travis, called Walt, and then had some booze. I'm not really sure of the need for him, but he was an interesting character to have. The low-speed Mitchell, Joe Don Baker style chase where Travis and Hunter are chasing down Jane's car was the worst part of the movie. It wasn't horrible, it was just yawn-inducing, really added nothing to it. It felt like padding and was just 5-6 minutes that didn't really do anything for the movie. I have some questions about Jane's job. It was a nudie booth of sorts. Was she paid by the hour? Usually places like that have coins or tokens or something you have to buy to purchase time. I had a friend who worked in those nearing the end of high school, and you purchase tokens as time for them, and it's designed so you don't really know how much time the tokens are worth. It's like a mobile game, and where the premium currency packs never cover enough for what you really want. But he sort of walks in and just hangs out, and are they tips only? I don't really understand the business model there. The soundtrack, I know, it was all right. It was incidental. There are a few moments that helped out, and thankfully Harry was on a few songs to add some flavor to it. But it didn't really do that much, and the quality of acting and the tension in the scenes was far more enough, but it helped. It helped, so it was serviceable. Overall, this movie is beautiful. It's Americana in so many ways. Every shot in it feels like it could be art hung in a modern American art gallery. We see deserts and small towns and motels and cities and all this, I don't know how else to say it, Americana. America, what it feels like to be in an American city, an American town. It's almost strange to say that, but I got an incredible sense of artistic flow in that regard. And that may not have been the intent, but it's a beautiful movie in its own right if you appreciate that sort of thing. Beyond that, I have nothing but great things to say. If you hadn't noticed, a sweet and devastating film that doesn't feel quite as long as its 2+ hour runtime. Has a really natural flow that goes from place to pace without so much padding or fluff. And I said this a little earlier, this might be Harry Dean Stanton's best film. I'd love to hear arguments otherwise. Beyond that, I don't really have too much to add. I praise this film highly. I think it's a classic, and I would highly recommend it to just about anyone. Yeah. Well, everyone, that is it for not only Paris, Texas, but Harry Dean Stanton Month. I want to say thank you, Harry, for everything you did, and rest in peace. Well, what Harry movie would you have liked me to talk about? Maybe I didn't. Maybe I'll come back to it. Let me know down below. Send over to my Patreon and tell me what you want to review besides that. Follow me on Instagram under Demon Peaks for daily Twin Peaks memes. Check out my podcast, the Dark Peaks Podcast, where me and another gentleman talk about whatever, mostly crack rock. Next month, I start Werner Herzog month with Fitz Carlado. This has been the Tony Makai, Master of Minds and of Men. Thank you, and goodbye.